Good morning, everyone. First of all, I thoroughly enjoyed the two presentations. My colleagues, my friends did earlier. So I've been with IBM for quite some time. So I've seen many folks like you, Scott. So you're always welcome. Welcome back if you want to come back. I know you said your father was with IBM for a long time, so today I think Scott talked at the ground level of coding. By the way, so my title there says, I've just been coding for living for the last 20 years. It doesn't mean anything more than that. So Scott talked about a lot of coding at the lowest level, and I think Ravi touched upon a lot of concepts, where the future is going. So I'm going to spend some time on mobile-specific stuff, because mobility is today, and it's here today. We are investing a lot from IBM, and we are helping a lot of customers to build great solutions. So I'm going to share some of that information with you today on what we have done, what is some of the innovation that we are building in our labs, and also for the folks who are on the journey of starting your own venture, some of the pains that we have gone through. Perhaps I want to share some of them as well, and also finally a few things about where the industry is going, from mobility perspective, right? So if you look at the trend, this caught my attention. So one of the Google guys picked up this data, and it's great, right? So you have 7.1 billion population on the planet, and there are about so close to about 3.5. I think some text over there. So 6 billion of them are using mobile phones versus 3.5 billion people using the toothbrush. So which means folks probably have like 2 or 3 mobile phones carrying with them, right? So the way we see industry trending, especially in the mobile space, so we categorize into these 5 areas. So first of all, we all know that mobile is primary, right? Because everyone is carrying a cell phone, a smartphone. I'm pretty sure a lot of tweets are going on the Twitter right now. Advantage of this, and harnessing the power of mobile phones. So I'll talk about that a little bit later in the presentation. So the second part is, once you start using the application, they would like to use the data. So Ravi talked about some of the analytics aspect of it, right? So they want to use the data, how you are using the applications, so that they can use the data to come up with new use cases, right? So there was one, for example, from contextual point of view. A couple of years ago, I was in the U.S. around Thanksgiving time, which is a great time to be in the U.S. You go out for shopping. There's like crazy deals going on, right? Some retailers offering 70% discount on some laptops and whatnot. So that used to be the trend, I believe, and in the last 2 years, it's completely changing, right? So I walked in with a friend of mine, who had a smartphone application with him, and he would go to the store, and he would look up the QR code of the product, right? Take a quick picture, and it would tell him based on the location where he is. The app would tell him, dude, if you drive for another 15 minutes, right, or maybe another 5 minutes, there's a mall right across the street which is offering 30% more discount than what you're seeing right now. It would even give you the driving directions. Just make left, make right, make right. There's a store, and you'll find the product 20% less. So you use the information about location, where you are, right? About some inventory information from various vendors, and you came up with some suggestion to the customers. The customer is happy because he or she is going to save a lot of money there, right? So those are the use cases, and of course retailers hate that because they just lost a customer walking away from their store to go to some other store. So those are the kind of use cases that a lot of startup companies, a lot of customers are looking to get the value out of. The third trend is transactions. Companies are looking to increase more and more transactions. So we all know, so Flipkart, great ad. I don't know if you guys have seen it. So Flipkart has come up with a new ad, and of course, Idea Internet no Ullubanang ad, great, right? So it's essentially meaning, you increase the transactions from enterprise perspective. You were selling it from the point of sale systems, in the brick and mortar systems, in many of those areas. So now you're actually using mobile to do the same thing. Buy more stuff, right? You bring more revenue to the companies. From experience perspective, companies are looking to continue the engagement model they have to mobile as well, right? Offering similar capabilities on the mobile. I mean, that's another trend that we see. And the last one, as Ravi rightly pointed out, where the industry is going is Internet of Things. I mean, amazing use cases. We currently are working with an automobile company as part of our Smarter City initiative. It's great. So it's a city where there won't be any cars. I mean, citizens won't own any cars. So they will have cars from this manufacturer parked in different places. So any citizen would walk into, pick up one car, use the camera right from the phone, swipe it, and it charges your account. Opens the door lock, you get in, start driving the car wherever you want, and then at the destination you just park the car, right? Check out, just like you would do the checkout, and then the transaction is complete. The doors are locked. It's available for the next person, right? I mean, no more Bangalore traffic mess. If somebody were to come up with that kind of idea here. So it's all because of the Internet of Things, right? I mean, it's the sensors that are available in a car being connected to some backend, being controlled by your smartphone, an app that's running on a smartphone, starting from controlling the engine, starting from making the payments, right? I mean, you can imagine all kinds of scenarios there. Okay, so just a quick trend. So from 2007 to 2012, we saw 1 million apps, coming on app stores, and the data I got was from 2012 to 2013. In 1 year, they hit the next 1 million. So imagine the amount of apps that are exploding in this marketplace. Folks are building, and they're all these apps are becoming everywhere. So some of the pain points that we have learned, right? So if you are to build a mobile app as a company, or as a startup that you want to build your own app, some of the things that you need to keep in mind is mobile industry is totally different, right? I mean, if you're done, developing applications, JW applications for your backends, browser-based applications, so just don't think that I can just slap in a few pages and get a mobile app. There are a couple of things that you have to keep in mind, right? Because these are context aware. You want to use the sensors available on the phone, in order to build some use cases. And unstable network. I mean, I don't have to say anything here. You're on a call. By the time you travel 3 kilometers, the call drops 3 times. So similarly, if you're doing some financial transaction, right, money transfer, data gets disconnected. So, just take it for granted that you won't have a reliable network, until the network gets out, gets their 4G network, which is available, across India. Otherwise, we are stuck with 2G as soon as we cross the Bangalore boundary here. Smaller footprint, right? I mean, you cannot run bulky applications, so it's got to be really small, with a very small footprint, because your customers might have iPhones, but you might also have a Micromax, which could have maybe a few hundred kilobytes on the phone, right? You got to keep that in mind. Apps are always on, so if you have your backend, one of the things that we deal with all the time is the load that it puts on your infrastructure, right? If you have desktop applications, you know that from 8 a.m. to 5 p.m. you can increase the capacity of your backend, right? But with your smartphones, in the middle of the night, somebody just opens their mail and checks their mail. God knows what they're checking their email, but they still do it. So which puts a load on your backend, because now you have a session that is active on your backend, right? And there's a tendency that these OS have a heartbeat, right? Once you launch the app, if the app is running in the background, there's a heartbeat going on to the backend so that you are not logged off. I mean, that's the reason, on Facebook, when you launch, you automatically log in. On Twitter, you automatically log in. It's because there's a cookie and there's this active session on the backend. So you've got to think through a use case, or you think through the scenario where on the backend, you have so many sessions. So that's something that you have to keep in mind. So management is another key aspect, because Once you distribute the app, you have no control over what gets done with that app. Somebody might open it, somebody might hack, look into what's going on there, and no one will update if there's an update available. So those things you have to keep in mind. From the development perspective, faster development life cycle is given, right? I mean, you spend 6 months to build the app, release it on App Store. On day one, some nut finds a flaw in the app and posts it on the main page. You have no time, right? You got to fix it right away. You cannot wait for Apple to take 6 weeks to review the code and release it. So you got to have that, factored in, when you're building the mobile application. Different approaches are available: web, HTML, native, and security is a great risk. Just keep in mind, as I said earlier, anyone can, open this, your applications and look at what's going on inside. So the way we look at it when we build solutions, especially for enterprises, right? So we classify them into 3 categories. So one is on the user engagement model, right? So which includes how do I easily connect to the backend. Push notification is another key aspect. How do I notify customers? There's a lot of innovation, going on in that space. If you have used iBeacon, Apple came out with a new one. Fabulous for retail kind of scenarios. Offline availability, which is given for our Indian context, because you cannot have 24/7 connectivity with the provider. You have to factor in that the phones will be offline many times. So from security perspective, pushing upgrade I just talked about, and finally operations. Once you release the app, what happens to the app? How do I maintain the life cycle of the app? So going a little further, so we look at it this way. If you were to build a mobile application, there are these elements that you have to factor in. Starting from designing and developing your mobile application, there are a lot of things that you have to keep in mind. So the next stage, let's say at 10 o'clock, we have the design and develop, right? So you go to the next step, which is instrument these apps. So instrumentation involves basically putting few things there in the app so that you can find out what's the behavior of the application, what the customer was doing, right? Essentially, if you want to do mobile analytics, you have to instrument those apps. Next one, if you have to integrate, you have to ensure that the payloads that are being sent back and forth between the backend and the mobile apps are customized. You cannot have a desktop backend that you had where it was sending boatload of JSON code that was sending back to the screen. You cannot reuse that because now you have a small form factor, and then you got to get in the pagination figured out, and then you won't even know the form factors might be the same or not, because there are Android phones that are 3 inches. There are Samsung Note, which could be 6 inches. So those are some of the things that you have to keep in mind, especially when you do the integration. Testing is another key aspect. Perhaps it's not relevant in US and European market because it's predominantly high-end phones, iPhones and Android, Samsung and Google Nexus. But out here, every other day, we see a provider coming with a new phone. Especially the Android phones, right? So you have to keep in mind that your customers could be one of those. So ensure proper testing is done for those devices. Scanning and certification is another key aspect because once you say it is your app, your credibility is on the line. So you have to scan, you have to certify those apps. You have to ensure that only certified apps are connecting to the backend. Deploy, management, and obtain insight are the 3 areas, part of the operations. So once you deploy, how often do you want to update? How would you want to control those apps connecting to the backend? So those are part of the ops cycle. Okay, so a couple of innovations that are happening in this space that we are keeping in mind is taking the standard mobile apps to the next level. A few things like location, touch, speech input. Eye tracking, text spoken. So we're looking at some of these areas. So there are use cases. If you are used to using a mobile banking application, if you want to put a limit on certain amount for mobile transaction, right? Let's say, yeah, I'm done. So if let's say if you have 10 lakh rupee transfer that you want to do on a mobile phone, you want to put one more level of authentication on top of that, right? So you can use two-factor authentication, right? You could use speech or you could use vision, right? So in that case, just before you do the transaction, you can pop up and say, well, say your favorite phrase, and then you do a speech record, and then ensure that it's the same person. Or if you have a camera and if you want to do a facial recognition, you just pop up and say, well, smile, right? So and then capture the contours and capture the attributes, and then compare, and then let the transaction go through. So this is my favorite slide. Where mobile is going, in terms of the next level, augmented reality. If you have heard about it or if you have played with, some of these things. Last slide. What we've done is there are, enough use cases. There are enough use cases where, especially some of them in the U.S. and Europe, they take where you are, especially from the camera. That's when you pan around, they'll find out information about the location. Right? So, real estate one, you can hold the camera in front of someone's house. It will tell you, what was the amount that the gentleman paid, and what was the tax he paid for the last year and stuff like that. Information is available, location is there. You pick the picture, right? And then using augmented reality, you can do that, right? The other cool ideas that you can think of is, let's say if you're on Brigade Road, right? So I'm standing on the Brigade Road, holding my camera, and I'm just panning. Let's say, if I'm interested in, I don't know, Punjabi food that day, right? So restaurants can pop up saying, there's this restaurant, there's this restaurant, and let's say, there's a Punjabi restaurant that, you find, you're using augmented reality to find where this restaurant is. You could pick up and say, okay, I want to go eat there. Now, when you click on it, right? So imagine if you tie that to the restaurant's availability, the seat availability in the restaurant, right? That would be cool, right? Because now, you can say that my occupancy is only 10%, which means there are 90% tables still available. And if you want to say that, okay, if you just walk in, I'll give you, if you walk in into the next 5 minutes, I'll give you a 50% discount on your total bill, right? You just grab the customer, off the street into your restaurant. So those are kind of use cases that you can think about. Okay, so that was my last slide, and I'll be here. So if you want to discuss some more innovative ideas, I'll be happy to share offline. But thank you very much for giving me the opportunity. Thanks very much.